Hi everybody, it's Susan again. This time I'm here to talk about the Aries total solar eclipse coming up on the 8th of April. It's quite a big one. It's very astrologically powerful, but also very powerful in terms of the passage of the eclipse itself. If you're in the eastern part of Canada, eastern provinces of Canada, and down through much of the United States, you're going to be able to see it down into Mexico and into other parts of Central America, and I think even into South America, the northern part of South America. Find out where it will be near you, and see if you can take some time off work or take some time out of your day to observe it, because it's really special to be in the environment of an eclipse, especially in the middle of the day when the light just shuts down, and this one will last for a few minutes. So that's quite a powerful message. It's a kind of a universal reset, an opportunity to feel things shifting, recognizing that we are, again, this tiny little fragment of life that is dependent on such a number of different aspects of the universe, so the cosmos around us. And we are humbled by these kinds of events. So it's a great opportunity to practice some meditation or sit in contemplation, listen to what the animals are doing, observe what the animals are doing. They always change their behavior around eclipse times. And I think that can teach us quite a lot as well. They have a sense that something's changing, something's different, and therefore they adjust their behavior. So traditionally, it's considered not a good idea to eat or drink or do anything that you might want to start, create something new or fresh, or start a new project. In the Indian tradition, they wouldn't, for example, prepare food, or they wouldn't even keep food that was kept during or that had been prepared before an eclipse. We don't have to be as extreme. You do your own thing, of course, but there was a reason for that, and that was because there was a recognition that the energy changes during an eclipse. So I'll leave it up to you, obviously, to see how you feel and how you react. But if you have an opportunity to sit in silence and listen, we don't do a lot of listening these days without some kind of device to pay attention to. So it's an opportunity for you to just be kind of in this phenomenal energy where we recognize how fragile life is and how much we depend on this bigger universe. So I want to show you the astrological chart, which is quite phenomenal. In this video, I'm going to show you based on tropical astrology, and I do use the whole sign system, whether I'm doing private consultations or these readings. I just wanted to give you an idea of the overview to start with. Please listen to the overview, because I know many of you like to just jump to your own sign, but it's giving you a lot of context for then what comes up through for your own sign, and then of course listen also for your sun and moon and rising sign. They do make distinction. The sun is very much your sense of self, your sense of purpose that can relate to your career as well. The sun is our consciousness. And then of course the moon is our, what you might describe as the mind, the emotional nature, things that have to do with our internal life, our memories, and our connection to our deeper, what you might describe as soul. And then the ascendant itself is how we show up in the world and how we navigate the world, how people see us as well. So it's much more perhaps evident as well. So if you don't know your ascendant, it's worth finding that out. Lots of free horoscope creation websites out there. You can find AstroSeek, for example, astro.com, which is also Astrodienst. They're great websites where you can put in your birth data and get your own chart, so you can find out what is your rising sign. It's a really helpful thing to know. So do listen for all three. Do listen to this introduction, because it's got some content that's designed to get you to think a little bit about your process of personal growth and what's going on right now. I will leave the more global issues or the mundane issues around these eclipses, and I'll do them together for a separate video. And I shall be doing that in a few days from now. So this is now the 13th of March as I prepare this video, and hopefully by the 17th or 18th of March, I'll have the more mundane thing posted, so we can look at also what's going on globally. I know many of you don't really get into all that stuff, and so do click into that separate video if you're more interested in the politics and international organizations and how things might shift around these eclipses as well, which they will indeed. Right, so where to begin? I guess we have to begin with Aries, right? This is an Aries eclipse, and if you are already familiar with astrology, you'll notice that there's a whole pileup of planets here in the Aries part of the chart. It just so happens I use Greenwich Mean Time, that is also known as Universal Time, and therefore the chart itself is, I put the chart in Greenwich, England, which is just outside of London. And that is because I have so many viewers from all over the world that it makes more sense to just put it at the 0 hour. And so quite remarkably, you know, given that this is the chart for Greenwich, it's a chart for 1817, meaning 6:17 in the evening in the UK. That's why there's no visibility of the eclipse, and that's because we see that the new moon here is descending. It's moving down towards the horizon. It's very much on the horizon at the time of the eclipse in Universal Time. If this were done, for example, for New York, that would be at the top of the chart, because you'll see that much more closely towards the middle of the day. And so for you in the East Coast, for example, of North America, you'll be watching this about 5 hours earlier. So that would be around 1:17 in the afternoon, and then 3 hours before that for the West Coast. So you will get quite a good range of visibility in the US particularly, and we'll have to, in Europe and the rest of the world, we'll have to watch that on TV. Anyway, the point being that the ascendant at the time of this Aries total eclipse is in Libra, just by one of those cosmic occurrences, a fluke you might call it. And it just so happens that the South Node, or Ketu as we also call it, is on this ascendant within really like 14 arc minutes of a degree, which is like not even a quarter of a degree. It's quite phenomenal. And so there, obviously, that means that the North Node itself is on the descendant. And there's so many reasons why I find this extremely compelling, because before we even get into this new moon, I wanted to point out that there's such a strong theme of our relationships and our sense of self and our participation in relationships, and what I see as our need to take responsibility for how we engage in our relationships. And I will speak at length about that shortly. But I find this really quite extraordinary. I always like to look at the chart initially, especially when I do a reading. I kind of look at things almost like an omen. There are things that jump out at me. There are things that are really just characterizing the energy of the chart. And certainly this axis of Aries Libra, which has been very much part of our collective story and individual stories since July 2023, is a very prominent theme right now. How are we in relationships? What is our level of potentially selfishness or integrity or care and affection in relationships? How do we need to renegotiate relationships and agreements that we might have with people? And again, you can extrapolate everything I say into a collective message, as well as, of course, your individual personal situation. If you are a Libra rising, you're getting a really strong reading already, and then later I will reiterate that for individuals. But this is something that we already can register at this time. So we're looking at a period of time that's going to build up a couple of weeks before this eclipse. So we have another lunar eclipse, for which I've already done a video on the 25th of March. And that lunar eclipse is at 5 degrees of Libra, and where the sun is at 5 degrees of Aries, and we have Venus there. And Venus, of course, rules Libra. So Venus is in Aries at the time of this solar eclipse. Venus was exalted in Pisces during the lunar eclipse, and that also that remains to be seen yet as I'm doing this video, but I think we will see that there is an opportunity for something to shift in terms of our way of communicating or relating to others, and some possibility of a shift in the way that we see our role in relationships. And now, of course, as Venus rather moves into Aries, in this next eclipse, this very powerful total solar eclipse, we now have maybe a motivation, a personal motivation, a personal angle that wasn't there in the previous eclipse. So there may have been a more exalted or a more hopeful, potentially romanticized or pie in the sky kind of vision of relationships that now becomes much more hard-nosed and maybe much more personally oriented as well. So there's a lot of shape-shifting around the last couple of weeks of March and the first couple of weeks of April that I think is going to be bringing us to a completely different conclusion or a different place in terms of how we are connecting to people in our relationships, and in all situations, private and global or collective. And one of the things that makes this a total eclipse is the proximity of the North Node. This is a North Node eclipse. That means that we're going towards something new, towards something expansive, towards something that we haven't yet seen or that we haven't yet experienced. But because it's very close, it's within less than 4 degrees of the new moon degree, this makes it even more powerful because it's really obscuring the new moon. So that means that, for example, when we had the partial lunar eclipse, the 25th of March, there was about a 10-degree orb between the South Node and the moon. And that's enough to take a little chunk out of the moon, but not enough to really block it completely. Whereas when we have a tight conjunction like this between the North Node and the new moon, this actually is going to be a complete blockage of the sun. So that the moon itself is actually coming in between the sun and the earth and lining up exactly. Now, I wanted to show you the difference here. Let me just show you the degree points before I do that. So we have Chiron at this new moon. So we have the new moon at 21 degrees of Aries, then the sun, the moon itself at 1921, the sun is at 1923, and Chiron at 1924. And that is because I'm using the eclipse chart. So if you're an astrology nerd, this will interest you. For the rest, you can just ignore this. But it's a different chart when we talk about the eclipse compared to the actual event of the new moon. And so keep those degree points in mind as we now have a look at the new moon chart, which has everything lining up exactly. So we have the moon, the sun, and Chiron all at 19 degrees and 24 minutes. Notice that the ascendant also moved. Notice, if you will, that the Lilith, which also depends on the movement of the moon and the sun, also shifted. Otherwise, we wouldn't have noticed anything really changing. But that 2.5 minutes difference, because this is at 1920, 51, almost 1921, meaning 7:21. That is a really big shift. And maybe, sorry, I think I've got the timing wrong. Hang on. Let me check. That is, yeah, so it's 3.5 minutes pretty much. So maybe 4 even. Sorry, my math is bad on the fly. So we're looking at a few minutes difference. I'll just round. And just to say that this is extraordinary. It's a very rare occurrence to have something so tight, so really connected. So the fact that Chiron itself, which has been in Aries since May 2018, is exactly conjoining the sun and the moon at this time of this eclipse is, for me, just mind-blowing. And I just see that again as an omen, as something we really need to pay close attention to. And let me explain a little bit what all of this might mean in just a moment. Another thing that becomes very powerful is this very close conjunction between Mercury, which is now retrograding back into Aries, and very soon after this new moon slash solar eclipse is going to be conjoining Aries again within a matter of a couple of hours afterwards, if that much. And so we're really looking at some really tight conjunctions. What that means is that things are going to be sharp and sudden, and especially in Aries, different. It's going to be new and fresh and different, things showing up in a very different way. Let me just take back the chart, which I want to work with, which is the eclipse chart. Again, it's got the 15-degree rising rather than the 16. And it's now, we're just working towards the perfection of this conjunction between the moon, the sun, and Chiron. So again, this minor difference, but for astrology nerds, I just wanted to point that out. And so here, when we have this sun and the moon in Aries, we're already looking at something quite dynamic, because Aries is a fire sign, it's a cardinal sign, it's the beginning of the astrological new year, it's the beginning of spring in the northern hemisphere. And when we have anything in Aries, it's always about something quite dynamic and fresh and pioneering and outgoing as well. So Aries is about taking risks and reaching out into life. And when Chiron is moving through Aries, there can be a sense of insecurity around ourself or around our identity, around how we show up. But Chiron can also show us where we are our own greatest enemy and how we are the problem in terms of our own over concern for identity. And this is, for me, one of the overriding themes or things that we can learn from around this eclipse time, around this energy, this powerful Aries energy that happens to be very strong for a couple of weeks around this eclipse time. That I'm calling this video Healing the Identity Trap, because we really are in this self-inflicted wounding of over-identification with ways of seeing ourselves that are normally in a state of flux constantly, and that we act as if they are permanent and solid features of who we are. It's a delusion of the ego, and it's something that is absolutely harmful in terms of our capacity to just thrive in life, to get on with life, and to connect with people, because we have such an insecurity around having to defend that identity, stand up for something that is what we believe we are, missing entirely the point of who we truly are. And if we come back to the rulership of this eclipse and all of these planets in Aries, we find that Mars is in Pisces, and Pisces is much more attuned to what you might describe as the truth of our nature, meaning that there is no individuated self. We can temporarily use self-identity as a practical way of engaging socially, but that's not who we are. And the permanence of consciousness, the permanent notion of awareness, this feeling of being aware of self all the time, is the truth of who we are. So the identity, the labels, this notion of I am this or that, or a particular nationality, or a particular religion, or a particular gender, or whatever, all of it is an illusion. It's temporal. And it has only to do with the way that we interact socially, and nothing to do with who we truly are. And with Chiron there as this opportunity for many years, 7 years, Chiron is in Aries, showing us drip by drip how we can actually be creating trouble for ourselves by over-identifying with these notions of self, these notions of individuation, these notions of ways of separating ourselves out from the collective, ways of separating ourselves out from relationship, othering people, and making ourselves somehow special and unique. It's quite damaging. This individuation process is a psychological necessity. As children grow up, they need to recognize their separation from their parents. It's a healthy part of establishing a psychological framework for life, but it's not to be considered the truth of who we are. It's just simply functional. That's all. And so if we can finally overcome that illusion of separateness and recognize, well, it's just a temporary way of showing up. I give my name at the beginning of this video, just so you have an idea of who this person is, because that's how we relate to each other socially. But there's no Susan here. There's no me in this notion of me. It's pure awareness acting as if. And once we really start to integrate that, we start to realize how absurd it is that we can become so angry with each other. And that's another Aries word, angry and bitter and frustrated with each other around any fragility around our identity. And this is where, since May, late April, early May of 2018, when Chiron first moved into Aries, we've been seeing this increasing awareness or conflict and challenge around issues of individual identity. I really believe that this is one of the biggest messages of this eclipse, that the fact that Chiron is exactly conjoining the sun and the moon, the sun representing our consciousness, our sense of self and purpose in this lifetime. The one thing that is constant, that's the sun is the one thing that is not only the giver of life, but the constant aspect of ourself. It's the awareness of self that is what wakes up in the morning and is aware that we just been sleeping. It's aware that it's now this time of the day, time to get out of bed. That's the awareness. It's not a personality. So you have to understand, sometimes people confuse terms in astrology and say things like, this planet represents personality. Not at all. The whole chart represents our personality, all the different facets of it. And the purity of awareness is what is aware of all of those facets. And so this is where I really want to put a lot of attention in this moment, and also in what I'm hoping to impart in this talk, where we can start to understand that we are causing ourselves a lot of suffering. We're causing suffering around us, through us, and around us by this over-identification with self. The one thing about Aries that's so lovely, sometimes people call the sign the toddler of the zodiac. And it's like when an infant is discovering life, they're just so enthusiastic. And that's also Aries. And Aries is full of verve and inspiration. All the fire signs are very inspiring, but Aries is inspiring in an almost naive way. It's just fresh. It's just like, let's try this thing. And so it shows up before it really understands. It shows up before it really knows what it's getting into. It's this curiosity and the spirit of open exploration, we could call it. And when we're showing up as that innocent awareness, then we're not so bothered by all of these notions of who am I. If you think of a toddler, they have very little sense of, they can barely remember what their name is. They don't really know what age they are. They're not really sure of all of these identifiers, these labels that become so fixated by later on in our childhood and teens. And as a result, they're free. These energies, these early naive energies, these wonderful exploration and creative and explorative and creative and pioneering energies of Aries, those are the times of our lives when we're most free. And with this energy of Chiron, trying to understand where we've been wounded in our identity, in our self-esteem, in our sense of self, we can understand where it is we need to liberate ourselves. That quality of Chiron as being the wound around childhood, for example, is one of the ways that we can look at Chiron. It's not meant to be a badge. It's not meant to be something we hang on to. We don't parade it around and hang on to it. We are simply aware. We become aware. Oh, that's why I operate this way. That's why I feel so vulnerable. That's why I feel threatened if my identity is threatened. And the only reason that that becomes a threat is because I believe I am that identity. And when we start to heal this wound, we start to realize it wasn't personal. Life is not personal. Nothing in life is personal. Nothing in this astrology chart is personal. We are free and we become that liberated toddler that can go through life in a way that is just curious and joyful and experimenting. Now, when we look at the moon in Aries, there's a lot of impulsive energy, impulsive emotionality, there's a lot of originality, there's a self-centeredness. And again, that's a necessary aspect of ourself. There are times in our life when we need to be self-focused. It's very clear that at the time of this solar eclipse in Aries, this is one of them, but not in the sense of, oh, woe is me, or I have to focus on myself because I'm so special, or I have to focus on myself because I'm so damaged, or because I'm so vulnerable. No, we have to focus on ourselves with the aim to grow and understand. And for me, this is the best use of astrology. I don't find it useful in any other way except to grow and understand. So when we're looking at all of these different aspects of the eclipse, I'd like you to listen to what I'm saying through this filter, through this lens of how can I grow and understand through a better awareness of who I really am? Who am I? How do I behave? How am I showing up in the world? And even, again, in terms of this, the angles of the chart, we have the ascendant at the south node in Libra at 15 degrees, and then we have the midheaven at 20 degrees of Cancer. And Cancer is about nurturance, it's about our connection to our emotions and our emotional nature. It is ruled by the moon. And that midheaven is squared by this whole configuration here, the moon and the sun and Chiron. And that's also really significant. If I were reading this as a natal chart, it would be really, really obvious that there's an urge here, a desire, a need for this individual or this energy to find itself, to be able to be witnessed, to be able to be experienced in life, not necessarily through another, which would be the original impulse with all this seventh house energy, but rather through one's self, giving permission to oneself to be this individual, to be this person that is playful and fun and exploring just what it means to be human, just what it means to be alive in this moment. And so here I want to just take a moment to read to you something by Joan Didion, who many of you will know, American author who passed away a couple of years ago. I'm on COVID time still now. That could be much longer ago than I think, but I'm thinking it's a couple of years ago. You'll tell me in the comments if it's longer ago than that. Anyway, Joan Didion wrote, I'm not telling you to make the world better because I don't think that progress is necessarily part of the package. I'm just telling you to live in it. It's very Aries. And not just to endure it, not to suffer it, not just to suffer it, not just to pass through it, but to live in it, to look at it, to try to get the picture, to live recklessly, very Aries, to take chances, very Aries, to make your own work and take pride in it, to seize the moment. And if you ask me why you should bother to do that, I could tell you that the grave's a fine and private place, but none, I think, do their embrace. A little poetry thrown in there. Nor do they sing there, or write, or argue, or see the tidal bore on the Amazon, or touch their children. And that's what there is to do, and get it while you can, and good luck at it. Thanks to Joan Didion. So this is, I think, a brilliant quote in terms of this eclipse. It is really about trying to figure out how we can engage with our lives, engage fully with life, in participation with life, as I was saying earlier, in terms of listening and observing during this eclipse. If you have the great privilege to be physically near the zone where you will actually see the eclipse happening, seeing the absence of life, seeing the hugeness of the event, of being such a minute fragment of such a massive event, a massive universe that operates on its own without our opinion, which is very Aries, without our need to show up and say, this is who I am. And just recognize that we're living this life. This is the joy of Aries. This is the joy and the positivity of just being here. And it requires us to allow that of other people too. We are here because others are here. We are here. It's like that Ubuntu understandings. I am because you are. And this is all of the understanding of this chart. We have Mars in Pisces, fully embracing this kind of energy of a spiritual warrior, of a notion of what it is to have a higher aspiration. And Mars in Aries is aspiring to more collective or spiritual ideals, less personal ideals, which can be part of the energy that is coming through this eclipse, because it's ruled by that Mars. Mars is conjoined, it's 2 days later on the 10th of April, will be exactly conjunct Saturn. And Mars and Saturn together in Pisces show this kind of determination, this kind of energy of stick-to-itiveness. It's an ability to make something lasting, to make something more out of what is actually coming up. And it's in a semi-sextile, like growing into a semi-sextile with the North Node. I use semi-sextiles because I think they do tell us quite a lot actually about the quality of things. And so it means that it's not comfortable. This growth through the North Node in Aries, where we're going towards something that we need to recognize is partly our own creation. It's our own evolution, but still anchored in others, still anchored in relationship through the South Node in Libra, which we cannot detach from that North Node in Aries. And that semi-sextile is really beautifully explaining, giving that sort of energetic voice to the idea that this is not an easy task. It's not something that that we can easily do, because it requires effort, it requires sacrifice. Saturn is always an element of what we have to sacrifice, what we have to give up, whether it's our time or our effort or some aspect of ourself or part of our life that we have to give up in order to achieve the goal. And certainly when we have the energy of Mars in Pisces as well, there can be a lack of consistency. There can be a losing steam. Mars has a variable energy in Pisces, unlike in Aries, which is all about upfront and go, go, go. In Pisces, it's much more about holding back and seeing how things feel. How do I resonate with what's going on? And so there may be a certain amount of lacking in effort or lacking in consistency at times, but it doesn't mean that the work shouldn't be done. And Mars coming together with Saturn says, yeah, this may not be the Aries way to do things, but it's definitely going to get done because we have this determination. And it's coming from a place of a less competitive drive than, say, a pure Aries energy would be. It's a less competitive energy because Mars in Pisces recognizes that it's part of a whole, that there is no way to have an effect on something without affecting all other aspects of life. And again, I want you to think about that if you're able to sit during that dark moment of the eclipse and recognize, wow, like this is something that's happening that's actually so far away, and yet so relevant to what's happening in everybody's experience of that moment. And we realize also how precious life is in these moments that the light is interrupted. The sun represents life itself. It is central to all of life, that we wouldn't live a split second without the sun. And there will be a time when the sun actually burns out and the universe will completely transform, where the earth will no longer be able to sustain life when the sun is gone. And so we can start to contemplate all of these aspects of how we're relating to life itself, our individual life, our experience of what we've got so far, And are we over worried? Are we over anxious about our own little interpretation of who we are at the expense of our capacity to be involved in something much bigger? This is where I think Aries excels. It's the ability to take action and move in a direction, not necessarily based on selfishness. It can be, but that wouldn't be the ultimate use of Aries, but rather based on something that says, I can. I am, by the definition, I exist, I am here. That's very Aries. It means that I can. If I have been born, it means I'm worthy of experiencing life. There's no doubt, in any of that. So another thing I want to point out is this aspect here of Venus, which is in a really interesting place. Venus in Aries is very independent. Again, this notion of self becomes very strong within the context of relationships. If you know people with Venus and Aries, they're very fun, they're very spontaneous, they're very gregarious. They do enter into commitments and relationships really easily, and not necessarily, again, with a sustaining quality, because it's more about this kind of experimental or curious energy, and it does lack the sort of sustaining quality of a Venus in an earth sign, for example. Venus also is in opposition to Black Moon Lilith. Now, I don't always use these, especially during the full moon or the new moon reports, but I thought I'd keep it in because it's really telling as a part of this bigger story as well. And so we have this Black Moon Lilith in Aries, which represents a sense of what we think is missing or what we might feel is lacking in relationships. It can also represent a dark side to our connection with other people. There can be, when we, for anyone who has Lilith in Libra, and again, this depends on your entire chart. It's not the whole story, but anyone who does have Lilith in Libra may also have a certain over concern for what other people think of them, or an over concern for example, what others are doing, and so feel insecure around what they are doing. This is not really the case with Venus in Aries, who's really all about herself and what she wants to do. But it's quite a balancer to be able to have this, because part of the Lilith is saying, pay attention to what others are doing, pay attention to what others might need, recognize where there might even be a tendency towards selfishness, which would be a Venus in Aries quality. And can we be aware of that selfishness? Is that selfishness causing us disruption in our relationships? Is that something that we can learn and grow through, and something that we can overcome? Because that's ultimately, again, whenever we have a placement like this, or when something happens like this, to identify through a transit, it's an opportunity to overcome it. You need to acknowledge it first and then overcome, much like the quality of the Chiron, and recognition of this pain and this wounding around ourselves. It's not to say, deepen that self-pity. It's really to say, oh, I can do something different here. I can turn this ship around. Yeah, so this understanding can also lead to a kind of an appreciation of others, which is, I think, very important in terms of how we need to go forward in our relationships collectively and individually, to recognize that we're all going through a hard time. Nobody's got the monopoly on wounding or trauma. We are all going through a hard time. And it is not about, this is a very Aries word, a competition around who is suffering more. Because the more that we get into this competitive, divisive energy, the more we separate ourselves out, and the more wounding we get, and the more we feel like we need to respond in that way. So I found that this Black Moon Lilith was a very significant aspect of this chart. Now, Black Moon Lilith is not a planet. It actually is the dark side of the moon. It's the aspect of the moon that is furthest away in the chart. So it's a mathematical calculation based on the position of the sun and the moon, and then it's wherever is the farthest distance from the aspect of the sun and the moon. So it's an imagined point. much like the nodal axis is. It's a mathematical position that is showing the crossover points, or the points of elliptical um, or ecliptical rather movement of the sun and the moon. So I want to point out also that this Aries is in a trine to Pluto. So that, sorry, Aries, this Black Moon Lilith is in a trine to Pluto. And Pluto itself is also in a sextile, it's a separating sextile to Venus. And so here again, there's another message in this context of transformation and overcoming. For me, Pluto is overcoming fear. It's about overcoming and transforming a way of being. And in this case, it's in the sign of Aquarius. And so we're looking at something that needs to be transformed in our collective experience, in our collective, the way that we organize ourselves socially, the way that we organize ourselves in the marketplace or communally, or in our belief systems, in our polis, what the ancient Greeks would call the polis, the body politic. And when Pluto is in such a strong trine to Black Moon Lilith, we can say, well, there is something here that I can transform through this awareness of others, but not in an obsessive way, not in an insecure way. It's in a way that says I'm overcoming this tendency to feel separate, to feel different, and to recognize that we can embrace, in that Aquarian way, embrace the difference, embrace the uniqueness of each expression of life without diminishing any other expression of life, and nor do we need to vaunt any particular expression of life. So that this is the ultimate sort of Aquarian energy of equality, this egalitarian energy. Now, again, that's an impossibility on the level of personality, but it's an absolute fact on the level of our true nature, on the level of consciousness. There just simply is no division. There is no other. So that just is a problem that solves itself. I also want to point out about Aries. Aries is really significant in these two eclipses that we've had, the 25th of March and then again this one, because Mercury keeps moving around Aries. And on the 25th of March, Mercury was approaching Aries at 23 degrees, moving into the 24-degree conjunction with Aries. And now Mercury is backing up through retrograde into Aries. Now, Aries for me is very similar to the Plutonian energy. It is also a planet that is a transpersonal planet, so it's not something that we necessarily personally express, but we certainly personally experience it. But it is something that affects all of us. It's something that can it's so slow moving that it creates a certain archetype that we all tend to emulate, or we all tend to resonate with very powerfully in the course of the transit. Aries has been in Aries for most of the last 100 years, and it will continue to be there until 2044. And it only finally permanently moves, or permanently for long term moves into Taurus in 2048. So we've got, it's moving so slowly that it's going to take 4 years to go between Aries and Taurus, back and forth. So this archetype of Aries, in Aries, we all share this. It's so slow. It's got an orbit of like 500 years around the sun. It's twice as slow as Pluto. And so this Aries energy is about reintegrating our sense of disintegration. Again, we can think about this in terms of Chiron, where we have a sense of fragility around our identity. And Aries is where we're angry about something. And much like Lilith, it's where we can feel really angry about something, resentful. Aries is even more impactful in the sense that it's an energy of feeling shame, feeling humiliated, feeling badly treated, abused, misused, somehow feeling unjust treatment. There's something that is very raw and painful about the quality of Aries when it's not integrated. And so when it's not integrated, there's this fragmentation that exacerbates this whole feeling of vulnerability and prickliness around how people treat each other. It's really important to integrate that. in our psyche. Because if we don't pull those fragmented parts of ourselves back inwards and recognize it's all part of what we see as ourselves, but it's not something that makes us vulnerable, not something that makes us damaged or special in any way. It's a disruptive element if we don't integrate it, and that disruption is psychological, and that creates a kind of lashing out. It creates a kind of a resentment and a vengefulness, this feeling of revenge or avenging some perceived injustice. And when we haven't integrated what we feel has been, some kind of injustice, we will always attack. We will always kind of find a way to create conflict. The myth of Aries is that she wasn't invited to the ball. She was excluded by the gods, and she was jealous. She was revengeful, and she threw the golden apple into the ball, and basically with the message that this is for the fairest of them all. And that caused an absolute uproar because all of the goddesses thought that they were, of course, the fairest, meaning most beautiful. It's an old English word meaning beautiful. And that is the sort of background of this energy of Aries. But we've seen over 2020 and 2021, as Aries was squaring Pluto, or rather Pluto was squaring Aries, how disruptive this energy can be. It's a real disruptive energy because there's an energy of anger and revenge or distaste or a disgruntlement around a feeling of not being seen, not being acknowledged, not being treated well. And I want you to understand this, not always from the point of view of self and victim, but also from the point of view of other and perpetrator. Because too often people are like, oh yeah, that's absolutely what happened, and that's because of them. And the finger pointing is the first thing that happens. And in fact, what I'm trying to encourage everybody to reconsider here is that all of this energy is about noticing that as we're pointing those fingers and pointing that finger of blame, we've got these three fingers pointing right back at us. And there is no way around understanding that everything is an interaction. And when Aries is integrated, we do have this capacity to overcome this feeling of living hypocritically. Very important part of our chart. And if you have that in your chart in a very prominent place, it can become a really potent aspect of yourself where you can use that Aries as a way of overcoming, as a way of showing the way towards a more integrated life, a more empowered life, and living righteously, living from a place of right action, living from a place of integrity. So both Pluto and Aries are, for me, very much about overcoming trauma, overcoming and healing from that, so that by the time we integrate the power that's possible in these archetypes, we are doing that from a place of much more peace and much more personal integrity. So really interesting opportunity for personal growth here, I find. Another thing that's very interesting around the astrology is that at that 19th degree of Aries, where we have the moon and the sun in Chiron, we're looking at a semi-sextile with Jupiter, and it's still also actively semi-sextiling Uranus as well. And that semi-sextile to Jupiter is suggesting again to me that there's a need for adjustment around our values. And this is another way of looking at the sextile, the separating sextile between Pluto and Venus. It's a need to reassess our values around relationships, our values around how we individually, Venus and Aries, participate in the collective, Pluto in Aquarius, and how we are recognizing that there's a wisdom, there's a need for us to take the high road, to take a path towards our personal involvement, our personal belief system, the wisdom and faith that comes through a good model of Jupiter. And we can integrate that in our vision of ourselves and in the way that we operate and the role that we take on in our lives. So an extraordinary opportunity. I think I will, as I mentioned, go over the more political aspects of this in another video. I'm not going to deal with that here because I really wanted to focus very much on this this understanding of how we are always in control of our experience of life. We are always the one that is responsible for the quality of our life and how we operate. And indeed, the Course of Miracles says, how does that quote go? It's something like um, the way that we, or what we believe about ourselves. I'm going to get this wrong, but I'll put it in the description below this video because it's really interesting as a quote, something you can recall and think back on every now and then. The way that we see ourselves is going to affect our choices in every day. And of course, the choices that we make every day create the whole of our lives, right? So how we see ourselves, how we identify, how we recognize ourselves. Are we a victim? Are we a martyr? Are we special? Are we deserving of some kind of special treatment? Are we horrible? And are we absolutely not worthy of special treatment? How we see ourselves will dictate every choice that we make, and that starts to generate the quality of our lives. So I think I'll just leave on this particular note, which is something I used to teach quite a lot, say 20 years ago when I was doing much more yoga and meditation classes. And I find it a very healing prayer. I use it myself all the time. And that is the Ho'oponopono prayer, what is also called Morna's prayer. Because Morna was the woman, the Hawaiian woman who shared it with the world through one of her students. And so basically, the Ho'oponopono prayer, I like to remind people, should begin as a message to one's self. So with regards to oneself, towards oneself, through oneself, and then imagining that towards others. So first towards yourself, then towards others, then even collectively. In that way, it's very similar to the metta or the loving kindness meditation. So Ho'oponopono begins with, I'm sorry. It's a 4-line prayer. It begins with, I'm sorry. And the next line is, please forgive me. And the next line after that is, thank you. And following up with, I love you. And that's it. That's all you need to say. And when you meditate on that, when you feel that prayer, when you direct it at yourself, when you then direct it at all of the facets of yourself, all those Aries and Chiron messy aspects of yourself that Mercury is asking us to re-examine and to talk about and to reflect on, you will find that energetically you transform and something shifts, and something can shift in the way that you engage with people around you. So I'm sorry, and please forgive me, thank you, and I love you. And think about this, reflect on that, meditate around that, and see how that might change the quality of your relationships for some time to come. Right, so I'm just going to change now to go to the sign by sign readings. I'm going to start with Aries, of course. And so this is for Aries, sun, moon, and rising sign. I'm just going to call up. So if I'm looking down, it's because I'm looking at my charts because I can't figure out how to organize my desk. I'm in a little bit of a cramped space here. So I'm just looking at my chart here below. And Aries, of course, this is very much focused on you. And it's certainly going to be an opportunity for you to feel that something is shifting in a very big way in your life. Because you have the Mars and Saturn as well as Neptune in your 12th house, there is also a lot of digging into your past or your background or your family lineage, perhaps ancestral stuff, but especially into the depths of your own psyche, your own mind, your own sense of what you're here for, perhaps trying to understand what's driving you, what makes certain things happen. And Mars, your ruler in the 12th house, can also have you focusing quite a lot on things that are in foreign lands or faraway places. So there's a part of you that is not physically here, and yet a lot of you which is really focused on the here and now with all of this energy. As Venus is also in your first house during this eclipse, I think there's something very positive about this for you. There is a good feeling about yourself. Venus in the first house brings a sense of well-being, but it also brings a sense of being able to connect more easily, let's say, with the people around you. And certainly because you've got the North Node also in the first house, basically since July 2023, you have really been focusing on what it is that you want, how you want to grow, how you want to expand your life at this stage of your life, how you want to expand your participation in your life, hopefully also with a sense of renewed confidence in yourself as you overcome the hurdles that maybe Chiron is throwing your way, or maybe you're starting to realize that there's a lot of things that you've been worrying about or blocking yourself with that Chiron is showing you it's really old news. It's stuff that comes from childhood or comes from another way of seeing yourself that's no longer relevant. Mercury is retrograding through your first house as well. And that Mercury retrograde, it's been in your first house since March 18th, and it is going to be going back and forth through this part of your chart. So the 13th or 14th of May. And so you've got a lot of time to reflect on how you want to reach out into the world, what action you're taking, the things that you want to achieve and accomplish, what you might need to correct, what you might even need to somehow, I don't know, recalibrate in terms of relationships, how you might need to communicate differently. Certainly that would be one of the aspects of Mercury showing up for you at this time. Definitely over this whole year of 2024, there's going to be a lot of letting go of ways of being in relationships that you're recognizing it's an opportunity for your personal growth. And since you also have Jupiter in the second house of confidence and your self-esteem and money, income, and so on, I think this can also be a part of that more uplifting aspect that this is bringing to you. I think it's an opportunity for just an immense turnaround, a really great opportunity to show up in a different way. If things have not been going very well at your side, so if things have been going well, it's just an opportunity for you to crank that up and keep growing. So I think you have a lot going for you at this time. You want to think about this in terms of a few weeks or months after. It's not going to be a fleeting thing. It's just the beginning of something new, Aries. So really engage with confidence, really engage through deep contemplation that Mercury retrograde is asking you to undertake. And then you'll see that things are actually going to be able to change between now and the autumn, September, October. So good luck with all of that, Aries. Taurus, this is happening in your 12th house, and the 12th house is that hidden aspect of your chart, and the 12th house is certainly a very important part of our lives because it's where we operate from, often without realizing it. The 12th house is also aspects of our past. It's our family through our lineage or through our ancestors, and also where we understand life from a hidden place, either through dreaming or through the unconscious mind, through how we intuit life, how we sense our way through life. And so there's something here because your ruler is now in the 12th house in Aries. There's something here that is very powerful for you because that means that an aspect of yourself is very deeply called into that 12th house at the same time as this eclipse is taking shape. And so something very new is emerging. It's time now. There's something necessary. Now, this can also be on a purely material level where you realize it's time to get organized around a long distance trip or business opportunity or desire to move abroad or desire to work abroad or work with foreigners in some capacity. There's a lot of activity there that can pull you away from where you're currently living physically. So it might be part of that. Since you have Jupiter in your first house, there is a sense of can do. There's a sense of this is possible. You're ready to grow into something. And so if that is what it is, then definitely it's time for taking risks as well. Could be a really interesting opportunity that arises, something a little bit out of the blue. Eclipses often bring things that are a little bit sudden and out of the blue. So you can really take advantage of that. You do have a lot of energy also in your house of the future, Mars, Saturn, Neptune in your 11th house, lots of focus on your future plans, on what it is you want going forward, how you want to see your life going forward. It can also be connections with people or groups of people, and that might fit into the aspect of all of that 12th house energy, which is about connecting with people from faraway places. Or it can be online as well, because that energy of the 11th house is also there, bringing in things that have to do with the internet or online communities or subgroups of people around a belief, for example. So very much an opportunity for you to grow, also growing in terms of your spiritual life. The 12th house, of course, is about what you don't see. Is the whole aspect of yourself that's behind the eyes. It's the things that you don't show other people. It's that secret place in yourself. It can be around intimacy, and since Venus is there, there can be something of an experience, of a relationship, of something that's happening that might be either quite suddenly beginning or something that's very in a new phase, let's say, that might be around a relationship. But be careful, because this kind of energy around relationships can often backfire. So there can be something difficult around it, either that the person is far away, living in another country, for example, or they might be otherwise engaged, they might be married or otherwise with another partner. And whether or not, of course, people fall in love all the time. It's not, we can't anticipate that. It's not nobody's fault if they're falling in love, but we do want to be careful not to engage in relationships if we know that it's not a serious relationship and the person is otherwise committed, because this is an energy that can create some disruption for you. And especially so later when we get Mars, when Mars comes through your 12th house, because it's going to rule that 12th house. So that's going to be in a couple of weeks from that period of, so this around middle of April, towards the end of April. Or is it even in May? So I can't remember, sorry, off the top of my head, but in, let's say, a couple of weeks later, Mars goes into your 12th house. So if there's anything a little dodgy, a little secretive, a little bit, something to be hush-hush about, just be careful how you play your cards there. I wouldn't necessarily expect anything durable out of a relationship that starts at this point in terms of a hidden thing, if somebody is not being above board or if they are otherwise engaged with somebody else. So just keep that in mind. And another way that this can work really nicely for you is if you feel like it's time to take a retreat and to go into a place of contemplation and move into an aspect of quietude or solitude or just learning, kind of apart from society, where you want to learn and move into another place where you can deepen your spiritual practice or deepen work. A superb opportunity to do research, for example, as Mercury is retrograding in your 12th house. So if you're a student or if you're a researcher, this is a fantastic opportunity. You might consider developing or launching or expanding a research project or a book or something like that, that you can really sink your teeth into from this point on. And then you would see the results of that a few months away, so usually about half a year away, and it can be as long as a year or longer. So yeah, make the most of this. It seems like something is very profound for Taurians, and an opportunity to make some shifts, perhaps in places where you've been feeling a bit stuck up until now. All right, good luck with all of that, Taurus. Gemini, this is a lovely place where we see friends and our sense of the future, what we would like to achieve going forward, how we want to reach out into life. The 11th house is what you consider your vision for life. It's like your dreams for the future, the vision that you might have going forward. It's also the people you hang out with. It's not usually your nearest and dearest friends, but it's people who share ideas with you, who share either beliefs or ideas and a way of living, as well as people who are happy to support you. So you have a lot of energy there right now. This could be a brilliant time to get deeper into friendships or a social project or some kind of ambition and drive that you have around turning a page in terms of your social life or how you want to show up in the future or generally in the world. Your ruler Mercury is there at the same time as this eclipse is happening. So there's a lot here that suggests that there's a role for you personally, that there's something that you're revising, reviewing. Mercury is retrograding at that time. And so there's something that you're reflecting on or maybe needing to do again. But it's a good opportunity because you can reach out into new activities that might even be lucrative. Venus is there as well. And so this can be something like a new business opportunity. You know, Mercury also rules business aspects. It's a very commercial aspect. And so you might be deciding to generate an online business or start a website or start a YouTube channel or something like that, where you are not only integrating and connecting with people, reaching out into a vision for something bigger, but also you're potentially going to make money from it. This is the house of money that you can earn from what you do. It's the house of money that can come to you in surprising ways as well. Since it's a North Node eclipse and since Venus is also there, that can be very much true. Of course, that would depend on your natal chart, and it depends also on the quality of your natal Venus and your natal Mars too. Mars, of course, is ruling this eclipse from your 10th house. So with Saturn, it does seem to require some work. You're not going to necessarily have things dropping in your lap. It will require your effort with Mars and Saturn in the 10th house. Usually that's not difficult because you're feeling very ambitious. You're feeling like you're really raring to go and create something durable, something important. And that's going to support whatever it is that comes out. This could be like a kind of out of the blue opportunity that shows up that might come through friends as well, or it might come through people who are really well placed to support you. So all very good, actually. It's a nice place. The 11th house is a very social place. And because Aries is your 11th house, Gemini, that's one of the reasons that you are a social person. You're dynamic in social environments, and also the idea of kind of always shifting goals and changing your sense of priorities. It's also because Mars rules your 11th house. So there's a lot of shape-shifting there too, generally speaking. So this is familiar territory for you. You will enjoy this kind of let's say inspired a new potential that's growing. And with Mercury there, you might just need to tweak things here and there. You might need to reflect on that. Whatever was happening at the full moon eclipse on the 25th of March may have already given you some ideas. So whatever, if you're deepening those ideas, again, Mercury is now retrograding past almost the same point that it was at during that 25th of March eclipse, and that's your ruler. So very important to follow what Mercury is doing for Gemini rising, especially, and Sun and Moon, of course. So make the most of that, Gemini. It's a good opportunity for some fresh, clean starts. Cancer, this is happening in your 10th house. And the 10th house is how you show up in the world when you step outside your door. So basically, everything that you do outside of the home, everything that you want to accomplish and achieve, what you do through your career, what you do through charity work, through any kind of sense of vocation, all of these different areas of engagement outside the world, outside in the world, and how people see you. That's the 10th house. And there's something new here. There's something quite interesting that is growing and developing. Of course, the moon rules Cancer. And so this is always going to be an important part of every lunation. Of course, is going to be affecting Cancer quite profoundly, because Cancer has that sensitivity and follows that energy of the moon. That's what makes Cancer so moody and up and down, is because we're always changing with the fluctuations of the moon. And so this can be a really lovely time for work, for career, for how people see you. Venus is in the 10th house as well. And Venus rules your 11th house of money. Venus also rules your 4th house of family. And so there seems to be quite a nice support for you coming from potential gains, or even a sense of just a good old-fashioned 4th house emotional security, psychological contentment. There seems to be something there that is that allows you to grow in this new direction, that is this outer new ambition or sense of drive and collective purpose, or social purpose, you could call it. So Mercury is retrograding through the 10th house. So whatever is going on since early March, when Mercury moved into the 10th house, and while Mercury stays there until the middle of May, you might need to revise it. So there might be something that needs a revision, or it might be coming back for a second glance. It may be something that you decided you didn't have time for, or you weren't interested in. And now around the time of the 8th of April eclipse, it's coming back, and you can say, yeah, maybe I will, maybe I'll do the thing. You have Mars and Saturn in your 9th house, and the 9th house is very much about your personal sense of purpose, or your dharma, your sense of what you're here for. What is your life purpose, your life meaning? With Mars and Saturn conjoining there, that's a really strong indication that you have a stronger clarity and a determination around that. It might be around studies, that's something that you want to develop or learn, or get deeper into, or it might be around something that you're teaching yourself and you want to grow that and you want to develop that even more. It can also be just simply around your faith, what you have faith in, what you believe in. This is very much a part of the eclipse, because Mars is ruling this eclipse in your 10th house from the 9th house. So it's pulling in this wisdom and determination of what it is that you want overall in your life, and what you feel motivated by on a more philosophical or spiritual level, and that then becomes the thing that you feel ready to grow into in the world, in however you're showing up in the world. You do have good fortune with Jupiter in the 11th house, good support from other people as well, with Jupiter there in the 11th. So for Cancers, this is actually a really great break. It's a really nice opportunity for big time personal growth. Keep in mind that you will always still have to do something. So don't sit on the couch and think, when is it all going to happen? You really will have to work for this, particularly so because Mars and Saturn, Mars is ruling this, and Saturn and Mars coming together. It requires commitment, it requires work. And it's up to you whether you work consistently or not. That depends on your natal chart and different ways that might manifest. But so the opportunity might be there, but you can just as easily neglect that. And so this would be a time to really get clear of what do I see in myself? How do I see my role? How do I see my sense of duty or obligation or ambition and drive out in the world? And am I ready to embrace something new? Don't be shy about letting go. It could also be that you need to let go of something connected to home or where you live in order to achieve the thing out in the world. So that for a Cancer could be something quite worrisome or stressful, because Cancers require a really comfortable or a solid sense of foundation to feel secure, to feel emotionally and psychologically secure. Yeah, I think it's generally speaking, very, very good time for Cancers. So I wish you all the best, Cancer, and I'll see you in the next video. Leo, this is in your ninth house. It's a lovely place because that's in a trine to your sign, fellow fire sign. So lots of inspiration for you, Leo. You're ruled by the sun. And when the sun is in the ninth house, it's said to be in its joy. And so that's a wonderful energy, is something really positive whenever, and this especially applies to Leo rising, because whenever the sun is in Aries, it's not only in its point of exaltation, but for Leo rising, it's in the house of its joy. So um, that's just nice, really, really nice. It's a very strong energy for feeling good about yourself, feeling positive about your future and the things that you'd like to aspire to. This is something you've been reflecting on since the middle of 2023, as the North Node has been up there, keeping a lot of your focus on what it is that you want to experience, how you want to expand into life, how you might want to see your role develop or flourish based on who you are. It's not just sort of like, what do I want to do, but who am I in this lifetime? And this is really big in terms of the message of this eclipse. Do listen to the introduction that I was speaking very much about the issues of identity, because that for Leo is extremely powerful. It's very, very important to recognize that aspect of the sun, the solar aspect of our notion of individuation, our notion of individual self. Um, Certainly there, with Chiron there can be some worry around inadequacy, fear that you're not up to the task. And so you want to really dig into that and try to overcome that, try to learn from any sense of inadequacy or feeling of um, where you might be your own worst enemy, where you're holding yourself back. Um, Leo is not meant to overwhelm and dominate the space. Leo is meant to simply be that energetic kind of uplift, or the energetic um, sense of potential for the leader, the one who demonstrates, the one who shines the light. And so that doesn't require it means being yourself. The sun is just radiant, and it's not asking for anything in return. We're not, it's not asking for people to thank it or to give it adulation or anything. It's just radiating. So your task is to really learn how to be that radiant self, and any sense of quid pro quo or any sense of needing something for that is going to diminish your own light. So especially as you have Jupiter in the 10th house, there's a great opportunity here for a lot of growth. Your 10th house is ruled by that Venus in Aries, which is about to move into, it's just moving into the 9th house at the time of this eclipse. And so that does suggest that there's something about the way you're showing up socially and in your career that has something to do with how you perceive your role, your purpose. So very, very, I think, very stimulating, very, very optimistic, very positive time for Leo. Mars, which is ruling this eclipse, is in your 8th house, and it's there along with Saturn. And that's not usually very comfortable, but it can be an opportunity to overcome any challenges that you might have in terms of shared resources or money issues that might be about how to get money from other sources. But often with Saturn in the 8th house, it's an opportunity or really a necessity to learn how to become more independent, whether that be financially or psychologically. There's a need to recognize you can do this on your own. And as Mars and Saturn are coming together, and Mars ruling this eclipse, you have this determination, you have this capacity. If you're going through a difficult time, I think this eclipse can also brighten up what may have felt like a really dull or difficult period. There can be a real sense of can do at this time. So use this opportunity with Saturn going through the 8th and with Mars driving and giving some juice to that effort to overcome. Think of it as overcoming challenges, overcoming fear, overcoming blocks. And the same thing with the Chiron on the sun. Think along the lines of what I was describing in the opening of this video. So I think that's it for Leo. It looks pretty good, I think, for Leos. It's an opportunity for something quite optimistic and positive to shine through. So good luck, Leo. And for Virgo, Virgo, sun, moon, and rising sign, this is in the 8th house of what you might describe as what is secretive or hidden or taboo or challenging. The 8th house is all about transformation through things that become that can be difficult, that are requiring your effort or requiring your cooperation with someone else. And here we have the North Node since last summer, since July of 2023. And so there's a lot of focus here on other people's money, on issues that might have to do with your emotional nature, your psychological situation. And there's something very new that is possible here. You may have been feeling really down on yourself. There may be some issue around intimacy as well, especially since last summer, but perhaps also before, because Chiron has been there a while. Chiron has been there now for like 6 years or something. So you're getting used to this need to understand what might be holding you back in intimacy, what might be making you feel shy around connection. And certainly with this eclipse, there's so much energy there that this would be an opportunity for something very new, very different and vibrant. Perhaps in relationships of either business relationships or intimate relationships, or just in general in terms of how you share yourself with other people. Being intimate is not always a sexual idea. It's about how we are being vulnerable with other people, talking to other people, how you open up about your experience, how you open up about your emotions, how you open up about yourself. Not about, blurting out everything and feeling that you need to share or overshare, but rather just recognizing that there's a human aspect to you, that you are getting comfortable slowly, especially with that Chiron there, you're getting comfortable sharing with other people. This will be an opportunity, I think, for that to expand. If there is an issue around money, it seems that that's something that is supported at this time. Something new, maybe a solution to that is coming. Venus is there at this time, so that's quite supportive. Mars is moving into a conjunction with Saturn in your house of relationships. And so there may be a need for a new vibrancy around a connection with somebody, or a recommitment to a relationship, whether it's a business partnership or an engagement of some kind of bond with a person that is there perhaps as a business endeavor or a personal endeavor to help you, to support you. I think this can be very, very helpful towards whatever's going on if it's financial. Now, Mercury is retrograding. So again, that's another aspect of going back and forth over details and information that might have to do with secrets or things that are hidden, that might be private. And secrets don't necessarily mean anything bad. It's things that are just not usually open, publicly shared. But it can also be, especially with your ruler Mercury retrograding at the time of this eclipse, that you need to go over some details, that you need to revise a way of being around money, other people's money. If you're applying for a loan, or if you're applying for some kind of support, or if you're receiving support, or if there's some kind of tax issue, it might require some kind of adjustment at this time. Refer back to the 25th of March, where Mercury was almost at this same degree, but going direct at that time. And see that that might actually be now under review, whatever that was, a couple of weeks before. So Jupiter is in your 9th house, and that's very supportive overall, very helpful. And so I think there is a lot of positivity, because that Jupiter is trining your house of self. especially if you're a Virgo ascendant, if you're the sun and moon, that will be 9 houses from your sun or moon. So this is something to have optimism for, having perhaps a new worldview or a new sense of faith or a new belief, a new way of conceiving of life or a new way of seeing yourself can be part of whatever it is that's new and different in terms of your more hidden side. And of course, as you're watching a video about astrology, the 8th house also represents all of this stuff, the occult stuff and the mysteries of life. And so perhaps there's something here that you've decided or that is going to become more obvious to you around what you understand in your subconscious or in that aspect of your hidden nature, how you want to maybe work or teach or do something with occult practices. So it's a big deal when something's happening like this in the 8th house. It can be very disruptive because it is often about sudden shocking events, but it does seem that you've got some support here with that Jupiter in the 9th house where it loves to be, and which gives you a very, very strong sense of connection to something bigger than yourself. So for sure, listen to the introductory part of this video, because that will also give you some ideas around how this all might be panning out for you. So good luck, Virgo. I'll see you in the next video. Libra, of course, this is happening opposite from your sign, and you saw that in the introduction. If you watched it, if you did not, please go back, because much of what I was saying really applies directly to you. So there will be certainly a lot of awareness around relationships for you. There can be some surprises in terms of how relationships are panning out for you. An awareness of what you need to do in relationships and how you need to engage in a different way. Certainly with the South Node going through your first house of self all this time since last July and through all of 2024, you are also having to adapt around issues of relationships, recognizing that there's a way that you have been that needs to change. There's something that you need to do differently, show up differently in relationships, and there's something here for you to develop. So Saturn and Mars are in your 6th house of everyday work, health, difficulties to overcome, obstacles of all kinds, connections with employees or colleagues, for example, at work. So it may be that you have to make an adjustment that is actually based on work. And this can have something to do with business partnerships, for example. Your ruler Venus is in the 7th house, and so she's not always comfortable there. So the rulers of the signs are usually more comfortable in the sign, and when they're opposite the sign, there's an awkwardness because the nature of your ruler is integration and connection and developing something in unison with someone else, or in a kind of a collective spirit, whereas here Venus is taking on a more self-centered or self-aware approach. So there's a lot of this energy that requires some new way of seeing yourself in relationship that might require you to be more sort of self-interested than you might otherwise be. That depends on your chart. It's not because you're Libra rising that you're total pushover either, but just to say, this is that energy that is requiring a lot more of you to show up and to be in a state of awareness around what you need in relationship and also your role in relationship. And so again, listen to the introduction because that will have a lot of information for you. And then still you've got Jupiter in the 8th along with Uranus. So intimacy or everything that you share with another is also affected in some way that I think can be very positive. But certainly there's a lot of input there, as Venus, your ruler, is also ruling that 8th house. And so there's quite a lot of information or connection or exchanges around other people's beliefs or needs or support or money, etc., at this time. So perhaps if there's something going on around your marriage, you also are realizing something happening in terms of the finances that might be beneficial. For example, with Jupiter going into the 8th, partner can be experiencing a successful period financially, or feeling that you are supported by people because of that Jupiter there. So whatever this new thing is in relationship for you, it's about growing and finding yourself in a new way. So it's very important anyway for you, Libra, because that is the theme here of the nodal axis for the whole of 2024. And it's going to come back to you when you have the solar eclipse in your sign on the 2nd of October. So the more work you do now, the more easily you'll be able to integrate whatever this new thing is on the 2nd of October. So good luck with everything, Libra, and I'll see you in the next video. Scorpio, this is happening in your 6th house. Scorpio, you are taking care of business, as it were. 6th house is all about your day-to-day obligations and duties and things that happen that might need you to respond in a way that requires guts and determination. You have your ruler. Your ruler is Mars, just like the ruler of this eclipse is in the 5th house. So whatever solutions or things that might need to be done around this day-to-day issue, whether it's a health issue or a work issue or some kind of obstacle to overcome, you're creative about it. Mars in the 5th house, Mars in Pisces, trining your sign and then ruling that eclipse in the 6th house, you're getting some real creative inspiration around the solution to how you need to deal with this. Your focus is really on the everyday stuff, meaning that you are working towards how you are in your job. Does that work for you anymore? Are you still liking it? The Chiron there is also for a very long time already now having you question the way that you are. This might be a questioning around health as well. Chiron is focusing on how we can overcome and heal, which also can imply that we can become a source of healing. So it's not always a one-sided process, but it's about learning, overcoming, teaching, healing, and growing through that in a way that we can support others. So with a lot of energy in your everyday house, in terms of your schedule, in terms of your workflows and so on, there might be something you're realizing that you need to change because it's not working for you. Saturn is in your 5th house all this time until February 2026. And Saturn in the 5th house can have you feeling like you're stuck around your own creativity, or that you're stuck around what makes life fun. So it feels like something's not easy, something's not flowing. So at this time, there might be this feeling of something has to give. It's time for a break. It's time for this to be different. And with Saturn now, Mars now conjoining Saturn on the 10th, just 2 days after this eclipse. So it's already very tightly conjunct, but exact on the 10th. Your ruler, Mars, is energizing Saturn, finding determination, finding that sense of what it is that's bringing the spark into what you do in your everyday life. And then whatever this thing is, a new opportunity or a new realization, you're up for it. You're ready for it. Now you can go back to the 25th of March, where Mercury would have been roughly at the same place, but moving direct. So there was something that you were on your way to doing, and now Mercury is backing up, and you're having to think twice about it, or you need to revise, let's say, the conditions around that. If you are in a position where you're losing your job, or the job situation is changing dramatically, really keep the faith that this has to happen, that this is good, because you're in a situation now where all bets are off, but all bets are open, not off, but open, where everything is on the table and you can really start something fresh in the 6th house. Turn the everyday quality of your life around through the awareness of who you are, how you want to show up in your life. Venus is there making this a lot more positive. You have Jupiter in your 7th house that brings you the support of people who are good counselors, good support, a lot of interest in new connections, potentially new clients as well, if you work that way. So it looks quite good. There is something that you need to change to be more in alignment with your everyday balance of life, you know, the health through your physical health, mental health, psychological, emotional, spiritual health. That balance is, I think, what is going to be your focus right now. It's really what am I willing to tolerate, and what am I willing now to move on from? It's a big choice point, I think, but it's an opportunity for something much better to come along. So good luck, Scorpio. I'll see you in the next video. Sagittarius, this is happening in your fifth house. That's a wonderful place because the fifth house is it's trining you. It's a very creative spot, fifth house anyway, and then it's a fire sign in Aries. It's a very inspirational, creative energy, just like you. And you definitely have so much energy there for something new that you might have inspiration around how you want to express yourself, how you want to grow and create something out of your life. It could be a new project that you're deciding to turn into work. Your ruler, Jupiter, is in the sixth house of everyday work. So it could be that you're really seeing that you want to make something of your creative expression or who you are, and start it off in a whole different way, and that can turn into a new source of income. That's a very much an entrepreneurial place. It is about risk taking as well, which is one of the reasons why it's also connected to entrepreneurship. Investing as well, we've got Venus there as well, so that can also be something that you might be considering. But it can be something new also around love affairs or children, something that kind of comes out of the blue. It could be a person that you're meeting, or it could be a decision that you have around having children, or around something going on in the life of your children. Maybe it's your children that are um, changing, or there's something that's happening with them that you need to respond to. But it can also be where you just recognize that you need to have more fun, or you need to do something more spontaneous that is going to help you, especially when we find that Saturn going through the fourth house of your foundation of your chart, the fourth house of home, family, your psychological nature, what you need to feel secure, what you need to feel supported. Where Saturn there can feel heavy, and it's along with Mars, so there can feel like there's something really pushing at this time, and you're realizing you need to snap out of it. Maybe issues around home, the actual physical home, have been challenging, and you're now finding the determination to sort that out, or maybe you have to, and you're sorting that out. But it is coming also with a feeling of, I'm ready for something very different. I'm ready for something that is much more exciting, much more fun, much more open. So again, if it's a love relationship, Venus is in there as well. That can be really exciting, but just beware, again, depending on a number of other factors, this could be something that feels really important, but does not necessarily last for a long time. With all of this energy for, this Aries energy, it can be a deep enthusiasm in the beginning, an immediate sort of flash of awareness or appreciation or love or even infatuation, but it doesn't really last. And that's especially true because we've got that Mercury retrograde as well. So yeah, I think that's it for Sagittarius. I think you're doing pretty well if you stay open to being very different in terms of how you see your self-expression and how you create something, how you are able to make use of your wonderful, inspiring energy, and perhaps even bring that out into the work that you do through some kind of entrepreneurial way of showing up. But all good for Sagittarius, as it is trining. So I think in one way or another, it will be really very much appreciated. So good luck, Sagittarius. I'll see you in the next video. Capricorn, this is happening in your fourth house of home, and that is very much tied to your emotional life as well. So it's not just your physical house and home where you live and so on, but it's also what gives you a sense of security and support. So there's something new here. That could be anything ranging from having a new property or desire to move, or a sense of it's time to move, or there's a sense that you may not have even been thinking about moving, and then all of a sudden this fabulous opportunity comes up around a new house or around an opportunity to find a better situation in your home life, and you're ready to take it. Now, this might also be something that was discovered already in March, and especially around the 25th of March, we had Mercury going direct at roughly the same place that it is in now, retrograde. So there could be something that you are tying in from one to another of these eclipses, and the whole space around the second half of March, first half of April might have to do with where you're realizing you are putting your energy through your house and home, or even again through your emotional and psychological nature. There's something that you're realizing that is a new thing. It's something new. And so it might even be, you might even describe that as a new attitude, that you're ready for a new vision of how you support yourself psychologically, emotionally. It can also be the way that you connect with your family, or there's some issue with the family. And that can be family of origin as well as the lineage going back. Could be something to do with your, even your nation, your people, if you think of that as the lineage of your nationhood. That's also the fourth house. Fourth house is also anything that you invest in, so property investment. So you might be starting to realize profits or realize some kind of outcome based on an investment. You have Mars, which is ruling this eclipse in the third house of local space and community and your extended family and siblings. And that's with Saturn. So there may be something here that you're really plotting in terms of a new commercial project, or a way of connecting with people that requires more effort and might require more determination. There may have even been some kind of conflict that might be a conflict or a disruption, potentially even an accident that has happened amongst people around you or in your surroundings, and that also then affects you. It affects your space, it affects your emotions, or it affects your home. It's difficult to say without seeing your natal chart, but your ruler, Saturn, is with Mars, and so there is some kind of sense of determination and having to move through something that you are determined to overcome, that you're really ready to make lasting, something that you're really determined to put your shoulder into. You have Jupiter in the fifth, so there is quite a lot of a sense of expansion, a sense of positivity. Jupiter is trining your first house of self, or your sun or your moon, depending, and that's always very good in terms of feeling positive. So there's a feeling here that there's something to be done, but in your usual Capricorn way, you're quite ready to just plod through and do it. I do see this as an opportunity that can kind of come out of the blue as well, that can turn things around in terms of how you relate to your family, or how you relate to your past, or how you relate to yourself emotionally. If you've been in a bit of a funk and you've not been feeling great, I think this can be something that inspires you to take action and change. The third house is also the mind and your communication, and with Mars there ruling this eclipse, and Saturn, your ruler, along there with Mars, there's this kind of feeling of, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. I need to have that conversation, or I need to do this thing, or I need to change the way that I think and communicate, that will be supportive of whatever this new thing is coming in. Right, so Capricorn, that's it. I would need to see your chart to know more specifically how that might show up for you. But nonetheless, I think it's an opportunity for you to turn the page in a very big way. And I wish you all the best. I'll see you in the next video. Aquarius, this is happening in your third house of your community, your extended family, cousins, siblings, and your casual friends, people you have coffee with. This is also all about communication. If you're into business of some kind, if you want to establish a website, if you want to do something that is going to reach out in a way that informs people or teaches people or provides skills for people or is about learning skills. This is an opportunity. There's something new here. You might even just have this flash of inspiration around what it is that you want to do. So it's kind of like you might realize, for example, you need to have this skill or you need to learn this language to do the thing that you want to do, but it comes in such a way that you just feel super inspired by this. It's in a sextile to you that's very supportive. And your ruler, Saturn, is in your second house along with Mars, which is ruling this third house eclipse. And so there's a lot of determination around your sense of needing perhaps to earn money. Your motivation might be financial, or your motivation might be around the family. Second house represents the family. It might be about desire to invest as well. There's something that you're ready to invest. It might be about property because Jupiter is in your fourth house at this time as well. And that might be about wanting to own property or sell property, and you're recognizing how you need to proceed around that. This can also be if you are a teacher, for example, or a writer or somebody who communicates. It's how you might decide to launch something or to modify something to get better returns or have a better outreach. It can be a really good time, not on the eclipse, but around the eclipse, to use that as an opportunity to launch something. It really does depend on the quality of what you're doing, as well as obviously how it relates to your natal chart, whether or not you would launch something. But with this third house energy of the eclipse, it can be beneficial to launch around an eclipse. And again, it depends on the extent to which you are connected astrologically through the chart and also through the topic of what you're doing. Because with Mars from the second ruling the third, and then Saturn, your ruler, in the second house, whatever you do will be long lasting, and it can have real benefits for you financially. So yeah, that could be something very interesting. If it is about family, if there is something to do with kids or family responsibilities or some kind of issue around your health or whatever like that, this is something that also looks to have some kind of favorable outcome. Mars and Saturn give you a real sense of commitment and drive, positive motivation for whatever the goal is behind this, whatever your value is in terms of doing the thing. So all pretty good. And you've got Mercury retrograding in the third. So whatever it is, that if it's got something to do with finances around, commercial exchanges or keeping your books or writing or anything like that, this is a great time to revise. It's a great time to understand how you can maybe take some extra time to rewrite something or to reword something or to re-communicate and sit down and renegotiate something. This is also potentially around contracts as well, and get a better benefit out of that. If this is about travel, this also can be an interesting time. Mercury is retrograde though, so that can provoke some kind of potential challenges, but Venus is there in the third house, and so you might be traveling to see people, to see friends, to connect with people. Venus rules your ninth house, and so you can be even connecting with people at a distance. So if it is about travel, maybe you're also traveling with an aim to heal or to work on something in terms of how you want to develop yourself personally, as Venus rules that ninth house of personal development, and also the North Node and Chiron are there in Aries, focusing on yourself, how you might want to change or grow one way or another. So many different options with that third house. It's a massive aspect of our everyday life. It's a really central part of our everyday life. So it could be something as basic as your everyday life will change quite dramatically through a change of neighborhood or a change of atmosphere around you. So let me know in the comments, Aquarius, because it's a lot, and I would have to see your natal chart to see what that might look like for you individually. Make the most of it anyway, and I'll see you in the next video. Pisces, this is happening in your second house of money and all the things that bring you support. It can be about investing, how you spend your money, your values, of course, your personal values, and Venus is there, so that also doubly emphasizes that notion of your values. This is something perhaps to do with how you realize you've got to take care of your finances, or there is a need for you to focus more on your attitude towards money, or your attitude towards your own self-worth as well. Potentially, you've got Saturn going through your first house for quite some time. That means that it's worthy of an opportunity to re-examine your relationship to yourself, becoming more committed to yourself, becoming more better boundaried, or better in terms of taking yourself more seriously, not in the sense of losing your sense of humor, but just becoming more self-aware and recognizing your own value. With the second house also, where we find Mercury retrograding, there can be something here that requires some redoing of your finances, or an understanding of how you're balancing your bank account or investments, this kind of thing. Perhaps you're reflecting on money coming in. There may be something that you're receiving, in terms of a new income or a new income source, or you're having to negotiate around an income source. And either way, that could be quite good. Your ruler, Jupiter, is in the third house, so your communications right now are very good. And if you do need to sit down and have a chat about money with your boss or something, and keep in mind that Jupiter also rules your 10th. So if you are negotiating for a higher salary, this would be a good opportunity, or you can really start to resonate more with what you're worth and what you're ready to tolerate. Mars is in your first house, so you're feeling confident, you're feeling strong, and Mars is going to be conjoining Saturn in your first house on the 10th of April. So the 8th is the eclipse, and just a couple of days later, Saturn and Mars are together, making you feel determined about whatever this thing is that you see as new and different, based on what it is that you need financially, or what's going on with your money in terms of what you already have, your valuables maybe. It can be also connecting something to do with your family, new information around your family, things that you might need to take care of. If it's around a sibling, for example, that can be something that you need to deal with by traveling. Again, Jupiter is in your third house of traveling, and third house is siblings as well. So yeah, I forgot to mention that for Aquarius. So tell your Aquarius friends as well, that third house is also about siblings, not just extended family, but it can be about brothers and sisters. And so Jupiter is there, your ruler. So whatever is going on here in the second house could definitely have something to do with your cousins, brothers, sisters, etc. Yeah, I think it's quite good, because the second house also represents what you see in terms of your self-worth. And with Saturn going through your first house, you may have had some doubts around that. And especially as Chiron has been going through that second house for some time now, like 6 years, you may have had some insecurity around money that's tying in to your sense of self. And so this is an opportunity to turn that around as well, turn that ship around and get something more positive, more affirming around how you value yourself and how you deal with your money. Taking care of your money, it's not a very easy thing for Pisces. It's not a very Piscean thing. Most Pisces couldn't care less about money. The point is, though, that at the end of the day, that's the world we live in, and it's important. So it's a reflection of how you see yourself as well. It doesn't make you any less creative or spiritual to have a notion of what's going on with your money. So whatever this is, Pisces, it's a new start in your money house, in your house of your whatever brings you support and brings you something that you can lean on. And it's new, and perhaps it could even be a new source of income to lean on. So good luck, and make the most of that, Pisces. And I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.